Hi, this is Yaffi Lvova, registered dietitian nutritionist and owner of Baby Bloom Nutrition, here with Daniel, who is sitting having some plantain chips. And today we are talking about gluten. Well, you may think we did gluten fairly recently. Well, I actually got an email from a viewer with some very specific questions about gluten intolerance specifically, and his mother's dealing with gluten intolerance, and therefore the whole family's dealing with it. So he had some questions that I think were very good for the general public. So let's get right into it. So you may want to, if you're interested in celiac disease or the general gluten issue, you may want to revisit my earlier nap time nutrition on gluten. So gluten-free sales of gluten-free products in 2013 were $10.5 billion. In 2016, they were up to $15 billion. What happened? Well, possibly the increase in price because, supply and demand. When some product is flying off the market, what do? Raise the price. Well, also there was a major increase in sales. And there are a lot of reasons for that. Some of them are valid and some of them are fad diets. So first thing, what causes adult onset intolerance and what can help? Well, here, let's start with the symptoms. What are symptoms of just gluten intolerance? We're not talking about celiac disease here. Celiac disease is an actual genetic disease. It's got a lot of different components, but there's definitely a genetic component. And that's the body's response to gluten in a very specific way. Gluten intolerance means that you don't have celiac disease, but your body still reacts to gluten in an undesirable way. So some of the symptoms are fatigue, mood disorders, depression, anxiety, nausea, various GI problems, migraines, body aches, dizziness, or rash. There are certain types of rash that are really indicative of gluten intolerance. So what causes it? Well, we're really learning a lot more about gluten as a protein. So the information that I'm giving right now might not be 100% accurate from a year from now, from the perspective from then, because we might be learning a whole lot more between now and then. But as of right now, we know a lot more than we used to. And so there's an increase in celiac diagnoses, and there's also an increase in the awareness of intolerance, what the symptoms are, and the idea that if you're having some of these symptoms, you should try eliminating gluten. Before, people just dealt with the symptoms and didn't think at all that it might have to do with their bread intake or what have you. So it could be caused by dysbiosis from a young age. So what's dysbiosis? I've done a nap time nutrition on probiotics. Basically, the idea is that there's symbiosis in the gut. In the intestines, you have billions and billions of bacteria, probiotics, living in there, providing a very, very valuable service to you. And it needs to be in a delicate balance. And when you're out of whack, you start getting some of these disease states. You get inflammation, you get a lot of just general yuckiness going on. And so that imbalance could be affecting some people's reaction to gluten and also certain other foods as well. So a good thing to do is to make sure that your diet is anti-inflammatory, that you have a lot of fruits and vegetables in order to maintain that gut bacteria balance, and take probiotics because you probably need them. If you're not sure if you need them or what you need to do about them, just check out that nap time nutrition that I did on probiotics a while ago. It'll tell you how to choose them if you need them, all that. It's possible that we're just overdoing wheat. So the paleo movement, love-hate relationship, more on the hate side actually, but they say that we didn't have wheat at all. It's not likely, but in any case, as we have gotten older as a species, as we've evolved, we are having more and more wheat in our diet. At this point, any given meal has a significant amount of wheat. So whether you believe that we should be having wheat or not having wheat at all, making it a black or white issue, the truth is that we have more and more. Our diet is just accumulating wheat. And that's not necessarily a good thing. There are things that are good in small doses, but if you have a ton of it, it starts to overload your system. So wheat is a really good source of some B vitamins and fiber, and there are a lot of benefits to having wheat in your diet, but it is very likely that we are overdoing it. And I did an Nap Time Nutrition a while ago called the grain hole, falling into the grain hole. And that's where when you look at your diet, you realize that every meal of that day was grain-based. And while I am not anti-grain, you definitely want to have variety in your diet. And it's very easy to fall into the grain hole because grains are so easy to cook, to prepare, to pack. They're mobile. They come in so many different forms. You have breads, you have cereals, you have granola bars. It's just really easy to make most of your nutrition grain sourced. So we want to try to avoid that and introduce some more variety to the diet. An increase in antibiotics. I'm sure you've heard of this before, especially if you're watching this. You're probably pretty aware of things going on in health news. But as we've gotten to this point in society, we're just overloaded with antibiotics, and there's kickback on that now. I think that we are really coming back on that, and doctors are prescribing antibiotics at a much slower rate. That could really affect your gut microbiome. And also, there's an increase in gluten-free product sales because it is a fad diet. A lot of people are doing it for weight loss, and you should not be gluten-free for weight loss. It's not an effective means to a healthy diet. So the reason why this is happening is because some very famous people have decided to hop on the gluten-free bandwagon, and whether they need gluten-free diet or not, by publicizing it, a lot of other people have decided, hey, wait, I need that too. So it has become a fad diet, and it's not necessarily for everyone. And the truth is that if you don't need a gluten-free diet and you eliminate all sources of gluten from your diet, you could put yourself at nutritional risk. You really do need to make sure that your diet is balanced, and that just comes back to variety of diet. So what's the first thing you should do if you suspect a gluten intolerance? Contact your doctor. If you have these symptoms, fatigue, mood disorders, nausea, various GI problems, migraines, body aches, dizziness, or rash, it could be gluten intolerance, or it could be something more serious. So you really need to contact your doctor to make sure that you're not dealing with something more serious that could be maybe masquerading as a gluten intolerance. Maybe it's gluten intolerance and something else. You don't know. It's really good to investigate it further. So the next question that was posed was, what are some non-gluten flours with less sugar? Well, this is an interesting question because the flour is not really the issue, because you can go with coconut flour, almond flour, teff flour, which is a grain common in Ethiopian cooking. But really, if you want to make a bread product that's gluten-free, it's going to have a lot of ingredients in it, and it most likely has higher sugar than than their gluten counterparts. And the reason for that is just food chemistry. If you want to make a similar texture to bread, you need to include ingredients that are going to give you that rise and that fluff, and that's going to mean, in general, more sugar. And that's what the food chemistry we have going on now. Who knows what's going to be available a year from now? There were studies done recently that showed that people who replace all of their gluten products with gluten-free products have a diet that is higher in sugar and lower in fiber, because the gluten-free counterparts are higher in sugar and lower in fiber. So the best thing to do if you're going gluten-free is to replace your bread and your waffles with something else entirely. You know, you can replace your pasta with gluten-free pasta, or you can just replace it with spaghetti squash or rice. So your gluten grains are rye, barley, and wheat. Oat is often contaminated. Also, spelt and semolina have gluten as well. And something I want to talk about is couscous. People think that couscous is gluten-free. It is not. It is a very teeny tiny pasta. It's rolled, like hand rolled, and it's pasta. It has gluten in it. It is not gluten-free. And you will hear from a lot of people that it's gluten-free. Unless you are buying a specific gluten-free couscous that says gluten-free on it, it is not gluten-free. So the next question was, are pesticides a factor? And this is a really hot button issue. People brought the whole GMO thing into the argument. So there was a study that came out that linked glyphosate, which is a Roundup herbicide active ingredient, to impairing cytochrome P450, which is something in the body that helps various cells to detox, and it helps move around different nutrients. And the thing is that we don't know if this is true or not. The study was done and it had its conclusions, but the study had a lot of limitations. The major limitation was that this was all computer generated. This was not a study done with actual live animals or humans. This is synthetic entirely. So it's all theory that perhaps this glyphosate links onto the gluten and inhibits the cytochrome P450 activity. But we don't know that that's what happens in reality. So yes, it's possible, but we really need to do a lot more research before saying conclusively that this is the issue. So the next question was, can anything help alleviate the intolerance? Well, yes, avoiding gluten. There was a very interesting study done in 2015, and this was actually, sorry, the baby is snacking. We have some plantain chips. There was a very interesting study done in 2015 that you may be interested in the next trial of if you're really into hookworms. People with celiac disease were given hookworms. They were infected with hookworms and tolerated gluten better after this therapy. So if you're interested, I'm sure I could find some information for you if you're interested in having hookworm. You can take digestive enzymes, and it really depends on a lot of factors on whether it's going to work for you or not. That's very individual. Probiotics, multivitamin, vitamin D3, these are all things that are aimed at reducing inflammation in your body. And there really is no cure for gluten intolerance. There's just management, and the main management is just avoiding gluten. And this takes a lot of care. It's something that you get used to, and a lot of restaurants and other establishments are really offering a lot more products now, really getting used to serving. I mean, if you go to Chipotle, for example, if you say gluten-free, everyone takes their hands off and changes their gloves, and P.F. Chang's will serve on entirely different plates so that you know that what you got is gluten-free. And there are a lot of restaurants having that have protocols like that really make it a lot easier, and we're going to see even more of that as it becomes even more popular, for better or for worse. So here's my question to you. What is your experience? Are you gluten-free, or have you been? Is it helping you? And why are you gluten-free? And I will share that I am gluten-free at the moment because my little Daniel here wakes up a whole lot overnight if I have gluten. So I'm looking forward to the day when I can go back to having a slice of pizza, but it's been about a year and we're going strong. So please join me next week for Nap Time Nutrition. I am always open for topic suggestions. Please comment below with your comments, and like my page, follow me on Pinterest, come to Toddler Test Kitchen, and I will be seeing you around the web. Thanks.